In the quiet streets of Normanton, Derby, a young mother's life was about to be extinguished not by a stranger in the dark, but by the very hands that should have protected her. Rukhsana Naz was only 19 years old, 7 months pregnant, and a mother of 2, yet to her own family, her existence had become a stain that only blood could wash away. On a cold March night in 1998, the boundaries between love and duty, tradition and cruelty, were shattered in a crime so calculated and intimate that it would eventually change the face of British law. This is the harrowing story of a woman caught between two worlds, and the ultimate price she paid for daring to choose her own heart over a family's perceived honor. Before we delve deeper into this tragic case, please take a quick moment to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light and ensures that victims like Rukhsana are never forgotten. Now, let's carry on with the story. Rukhsana's journey toward that fateful night began years earlier, in a life defined by expectations she never asked for. Born into a British Pakistani family, she was a girl of two cultures, navigating the modern landscape of Derby while tethered to the traditional values of her parents. At just 15 years old, under the guise of a family visit to Pakistan, Rukhsana was forced into an arranged marriage with her second cousin, Shazad Naz. It was a union built on obligation rather than affection, a common story for many young women in her community, but for Rukhsana, it was the beginning of a long, silent struggle for autonomy. Despite the marriage, Rukhsana's heart remained in Derby, specifically with a young man named Imran Najib. Imran was her childhood sweetheart, the boy from school who represented the life she actually wanted. Even after being sent back to Pakistan for a second time, which resulted in the birth of her second child, Rukhsana could not let go of the connection she shared with Imran. By late 1997, the tension between her forced marriage and her true feelings reached a breaking point. She moved out of the family home and into a house with her sister, Safina, finally attempting to live life on her own terms. But in the eyes of her mother, Shakeela, and her brother, Shazad, Rukhsana's independence was not a sign of strength, but a source of deep, public shame. When they discovered she was pregnant with Imran's child, the family's disapproval turned into a coercive campaign. They didn't just want her to return to her husband, they demanded she terminate the pregnancy. For months, the pressure mounted, with Shakeela reportedly even physically assaulting her daughter in an attempt to force an abortion. Rukhsana, however, remained defiant. She wanted a divorce, she wanted her baby, and she wanted a future with the man she loved. On the evening of March 26, 1998, the family gathered at Safina's house for what was supposed to be a meal. It was a setting that should have been safe, filled with the familiar smells of home and the presence of kin. But the atmosphere was thick with a premeditated malice. As the evening progressed, the facade of a family dinner crumbled. Shazad, fueled by what he would later describe as idealistic religious beliefs and an overwhelming sense of shame, confronted his sister. The argument was not a plea for understanding, but a trial where the verdict had already been decided. The details of what happened next are chillingly clinical. Shazad grabbed a plastic-coated flex lead, a common household item transformed into a murder weapon. As he looped it around Rukhsana's neck, their mother, Shakeela, did not scream for him to stop. Instead, she stepped forward and held Rukhsana's legs down, pinning her to the floor to ensure there could be no escape. For 3 to 4 agonizing minutes, Shazad maintained his grip, watching the life drain from his sister while their mother assisted in the execution. Rukhsana, 7 months pregnant and fighting for 2 lives, never stood a chance. In the immediate aftermath, the family's priority was not grief, but concealment. They stuffed Rukhsana's body into a suitcase and a sack, a final indignity for a woman who had only wanted to be free. Her younger brother, Iftikhar, was coerced into helping dispose of the remains. They drove nearly 30 miles to a remote area in Denby Dale, West Yorkshire, where they dumped her body in a field, hoping the earth would hide their secret forever. To the outside world, Rukhsana had simply vanished, another young woman lost to the shadows of a community that kept its secrets close. The investigation into Rukhsana's disappearance initially hit a wall of silence. The family provided false alibis and pointed fingers at Imran's family, attempting to shift the blame onto the very man Rukhsana loved. However, the weight of the crime was too heavy for everyone to carry. Iftikhar's girlfriend, Louise, eventually broke the silence, revealing to the police that Iftikhar had confessed the truth to her. On March 31, 1998, just 2 weeks before what would have been her 20th birthday, Rukhsana's body was discovered, and the horrific reality of her final moments began to emerge. The trial at Nottingham Crown Court in May 1999 was a landmark moment in British legal history. Shazad attempted to use a defense of provocation, arguing that the shame brought upon the family by Rukhsana's pregnancy and her refusal to follow tradition had caused him to lose self-control. It was a defense that sought to justify murder through the lens of cultural and religious honor. However, the prosecution and the judge saw through the rhetoric. This wasn't a crime of passion or a sudden loss of control, it was a cold, calculated execution carried out by those who claimed to love her most. Mr. Justice Tucker, in his sentencing remarks, described the offense as particularly horrific, noting that it was a planned murder of a pregnant mother at the hands of her own family. Shazad and Shakeela were both sentenced to life imprisonment. While Iftikhar was acquitted of the murder, the trial exposed the dark underbelly of honor-based violence in the UK. The case sent shockwaves through the country, forcing a public conversation about forced marriage and the extreme lengths some families would go to maintain a perceived sense of purity and reputation. The legacy of Rukhsana Naz is one of both tragedy and transformation. Her death was a catalyst for change, leading the British government to launch an inquiry into forced marriages. This eventually resulted in the creation of the Forced Marriage Unit, a joint initiative between the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the Home Office designed to protect and support victims. Rukhsana's story became a symbol of the fight for women's rights within minority communities, a reminder that honor can never be used as a shield for domestic abuse or murder. Today, when we look back at the calendar of crime, Rukhsana's name stands as a somber warning of the dangers of unchecked patriarchy and the lethal power of community pressure. She was a woman who wanted nothing more than the basic right to choose her partner and her future. In her memory, we continue to tell these stories, not just for the sake of true crime enthusiasts, but to ensure that the voices of those silenced by honor are finally heard. Rukhsana Naz was more than a victim, she was a woman whose courage in the face of tradition continues to inspire the pursuit of justice for all. As we conclude this episode, we remember Rukhsana not for the way she died, but for the life she tried to build. A life of love, of motherhood, and of independence. The road to justice was long, and while her killers are behind bars, the struggle against honor-based violence continues globally. Let her story be a testament to the fact that no tradition is worth a human life, and no honor is greater than the right to live in peace and safety. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.